Good evening, Montreal. Beryl Wiseman here, editor of the Suburban Radio Hour. My good friends and colleagues, Anthony Bonaparte, features editor, Mark Lidbetter, sports editor, and we'll have Mike Cohen with all the entertainment and society news. Lots of stories this week. Mayors, MNAs, and MPs are finally forming a caucus that they met with Housing Minister Sean Fraser on to press for the Cavendish link. And as usual, they're not getting very far with this guy. Big news that Pierre Poilievre, massive rally in Mount Royal, presented Neil Oberman, who we've had on the show so often, good friend and colleague. We've been in the fight with him on all the injunctions as the new candidate in Mount Royal. Denis Coderre announced his run for the Liberal leadership. We'll be talking to him later on. Please read the story on 1,400 people gathering in Snowdon to hear Douglas Murray, who was remarkable. EMSB topping the province in graduate rates. Great new compensation settlement for the cabbies that the government didn't exactly treat well. And finally, the president of McGill says no more amnesty for the McGill campers. Well, we'll see what he'll come through on. But we're going to start with a story that we're going to be covering this week that just broke, and I'm going to turn it over to one of the most compelling and significant leaders this country has, and that is Deputy Conservative Leader Melissa Lantsman, who's on the line with us. But let me just introduce this story. The battle against radical Islam in our streets is a battle that involves the civil rights of the Jews. No community in any country, black, Asian, indigenous, should be scared. And the federal government seems to be responsive to everyone, but not to the Jews. Yes, the Prime Minister can give out a word like something is shocking and unacceptable. And yet this week, not only does his caucus not reappoint easily Anthony Housefather to the Committee on Anti-Semitism, and I hope Anthony has learned his lesson about appeasing these guys, but appoints a man as head of the Canadian Human Rights Commission who has a history of being active in the BDS movement against Israel, who shared platforms with authors who've compared Israel to Nazis, who's been in other demonstrations where he's been right next to people yelling Palestine from the river to the sea. This has come up constantly with the Trudeau government. It's time we stop giving him the benefit of the doubt. And the most compelling voice for civil rights, Jewish civil rights, are just as necessary and just as compelling and just as rightful as black civil rights, Asian civil rights, everybody's civil rights. And it's a pleasure to have Melissa Lantsman, Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party, MP for Thornhill, who's been the most passionate and eloquent voice on this issue. Melissa, thank you for spending the time with us.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
What is wrong with this Prime Minister? He can't be this stupid.
I want to one day join your show where we are not talking about this issue and we are talking about a government that would do just a small bit of due diligence, who doesn't appoint anti-Semites, who doesn't fund them, who doesn't talk out of both sides of his mouth, and with a caucus that tries to cover it up. I've got to tell you, this track record of Mr. Detani, who's just appointed the head of the Human Rights Commission, should immediately disqualify him from being appointed to any government position, let alone being appointed to a position that's sole purpose is to fight racism and defend human rights. This isn't the first time we have seen it. It won't be the last time we have seen it. And it's time that we have a caucus that's going to stand up for the Prime Minister and a Prime Minister who is going to act in the best interest of all Canadians.
And we were talking off air about the fights that I'm involved with in Montreal. We have a commissioner for against racism in Montreal, appointed by Mayor Plante, who has actually marched openly, posted openly from the river to the sea. And she will not release her. She will not fire her. This government needs to get rid of this guy, First of all, this is the same government that hired Laith Marouf as an anti-racism consultant until the media started exposing his long history of publishing vile anti-Semitic views. And then it took him a whole month to do anything about it. And so now we see... Who, by the way, I debated on CTV against Laith Marouf. And he started with his usual excuses, and by the end of the debate, he had admitted on air, it's there. It doesn't take a lot of vetting. He had admitted that he wrote this stuff.
Well, it would have, it would have been good for the government to Google this guy's name, and if he used another name, just an extra Google search wouldn't have done him any harm. But I got to tell you where we're at right now. Conservatives been calling for the Justice Committee to come back. We need one of the Liberals who, Anthony Housefather happens to be on that committee. He can sign a paper today. He can tell the Justice Committee to meet, and instead they're having an internal secret investigation
Melissa,
to investigate
Melissa,
what is clearly obvious.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but I heard this, and I've seen yours and others' comments on this. Now, I don't understand something. Anthony was booted off the chairmanship of the Justice Committee. By what power does he have to bring them back? Like, what's
we need one Liberal
Right.
to sign that paper. It's a standing order that we have. We need one opposition party to bring them back to committee. And this is either him covering up for the government and having a secret internal investigation, or he can air this out in the open so that Canadians can see that this guy's vile views are problematic and he has no business being the head of the Human Rights Commission. This is, of course, after widely criticized legislation. You remember Bill 63, that's
Yep.
the Online Harms Act.
Absolutely.
This is an appointment of somebody who is going to have more power in deciding what you see and what you hear on the internet. The Prime Minister's trying to censor you, and he's put this guy in charge as the
Absolutely.
referee.
It's a horrible law. Let's just consider one thing, not that I'm buying it, and not that I think it makes any difference, but this gentleman has admitted sharing the stage with radical Muslims, marching in demonstrations where "River to the Sea" has been shouted. His excuse is that doesn't represent his views. What do you have to say to that?
Well, look, we can go through the litany of views, but in 2005, he wrote an article praising terrorism as an effective strategy. Sorry, in 2015. Now, that's not a very long time ago. In 2015, he's already accused Israel. He's since accused Israel of apartheid on Palestine as a crime against humanity. This isn't a very long time ago, and the apologies are not enough. This is going to be the arbitrator of human rights in this country, and we want to make sure that Jewish Canadians get a fair hearing if they ever end up in front of him.
So first of all, congratulations on the victory in St. Paul's, which is a critical riding in Toronto that the Conservatives won. It's been a Liberal stronghold. It's the sixth biggest Jewish riding in the country. Do you think that the government is understanding that the Jewish community will now react like any other minority community, and if they were apathetic about voting, they're now not going to be apathetic about voting because it was a 1,000-vote victory, but there's a lot of it was due to the Jewish turnout. Do you think they get that?
This is a government that's this election was a repudiation of Trudeau's policy on a number of fronts: higher taxes, corruption, certainly their two-sidedness on Israel. And what we hope is that other MPs who have claimed to be fighting the fight against the government actually stand up for their communities and walk away from this guy. He is dangerous.
The two-sidedness in Israel is not just in Israel, if I may. The two-sidedness in Israel is a rejection of Canadian values and liberal pluralism and pandering to a community that wants their religious law to be equal to our civil law. And that's something that Canadians are now understanding. This movement has moved away from Israel or the Jews. This has gone all the way to we want our values equal to Canadian values. That doesn't work. Is this government ever going to speak out on that?
Well, Beryl, we have a very big problem in this country, and the country feels broken no matter who you are, where you live, from coast to coast to coast. With housing out of control, crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder, and a real and Prime Minister who has turned his back on Canadian values, on Western values, and on everything consensus that Liberal Prime Ministers used to agree on. This guy is not a Liberal Prime Minister.
His father used to agree on this.
Well, I think Liberals before him are looking at this party, looking at it as unrecognizable.
It certainly is.
And saying that I didn't leave the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party left me because this guy is deeply illiberal.
Melissa Landsman, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Keep up your passion. Keep up your crisscrossing the country. Your schedule is unbelievable. And I suggest to all our listeners, the next time Melissa Landsman is in Montreal, you go and hear her. Melissa, thank you very much.
See you soon.
And good luck.
Thanks so much.
Big news, front page. Denis Coderre officially announced, front of the National Assembly, that he is running for the Quebec Liberal leadership. And he said it would happen sometime in June. He's done a total tour of Quebec. He did his 300-kilometer walk of reflection, and we welcome him to the show, and we'll come back to Montreal. I'm glad it went well, Denny. Félicitations. Félicitations et bonne chance. Tell us what's
I can see my feet now.
You have lost
40 pounds.
Yes. Félicitations.
I can attach my coat now.
Are you going for more?
Well, I have to walk for the campaign now.
I figure you're going to lose another 20 and you're going to get back to where you were like 2 years ago.
Well, I'm supposed to organize 125 spaghetti night in 125 associations.
Yeah, I heard that. You're doing
so
spaghetti.
I'm going to just stir the sauce. I'm not going to eat it all.
Don't touch the pasta.
Don't pass the buck.
Low carbs, Denny. Low carbs. I'm begging you, mon ami. Low carbs.
Well, as a boxer, I need carbs, but okay, I promise.
Yeah, but I'm looking
my
at
first political promise.
I'm looking at Mark, by the way, our sports editor. I want to tell you something. Hertel and Denny work out at the same gym.
Yeah.
And Hertel tells me he's a pretty damn good boxer. And Otis Grant, he was taking lessons from Otis Grant. So
that's a good 1-2 punch right there.
Denny,
I'm ambidextrous, so I get hit from both sides.
What's the plan? It's they made the actual leadership convention late. It's spring 2025. What's your plan? Is this summer barbecue season all over the place? What's the plan going forward?
Well, it's all about meeting people and make sure that you're relevant. Make sure that you have the credibility. I already visit 15 out of 17 regions in the province. And we have organizers. You know what strikes me is that for the last two elections, the Liberal Party tried to look like something else. And when you try to look something else than the Liberal, well, people will go for the right thing. And one of the problems is that they let down a lot of organizers. So I'm saying, listen, you can be disappointed, you can be pleased or frustrated. You need to come. And now you judge house with this foundation, and instead of trying to build up the party with the roof, we'll start with the foundation. And if the beam is still good, we'll keep it. And at the end of the day, we have to stop to starting all over from scratch. We need to make sure that if there was some good in the past, that we can use it.
Well, the Liberal Party of Quebec, the oldest
Yeah.
political party in the country, I should tell our listeners, I believe it's 156 years old.
Yes.
It used to have, it was the amalgamation of the old Parti Patriote and the Parti Rouge. It had two pillars. One, you stand up for the working men and women, economic justice. And two, you stand up for perhaps not French nationalism, but French pride in Quebec within a confederation. It seems that one half of it, the French pride, has been hijacked by a couple of parties, and the voice for economic justice that the Liberal Party used to be, that was the heart of the Révolution Tranquille.
But it's worse than that. Beryl, it's worse than that. The issue was that, and you're right, we're all a bunch of radical center, just like Quebecers. Instead of trying to be, nationalism is a good thing, but nationalism is defined by identity. You know how it goes.
But
we're back in the 30s. We need to make sure that we have a country, a great country, but we need to have a Quebec that's strong in an efficient country.
But was one of the reasons, there were two things that stick in my mind. The loss in Verdun and then the loss in Saint-Henri-Sainte-Anne. And when I was looking at what the Liberal candidates were saying, these are ridings that we held. They were chateau fort, but these are ridings with people with vulnerable incomes, and I heard nothing from our traditional liberals talking about their concerns on money, on economics. It's like we abandoned that to Québec solidaire. You're going to bring it back?
Yeah, but it's worse than that, because I believe that the next campaign will be on referendum. La question de l'une, we used to say, the main issue will be referendum. I don't need another country. I already have one. So if we're focusing on what's the needs, meaning exactly how to better manage and how to take care of the people's problem, you're totally right. And by doing so, I think that they will come back.
Well, I will never forget, and I encourage our readers to go on YouTube. Denny was in the National Assembly before he went to France some months ago, discussing his future, and Paul St. Pierre Plamondon walked by. And Mr. Plamondon is, of course, very well educated in English universities and in British universities. Yeah. And he has this wonderful plan for Quebec to make a militia of 8,000 people, to have a Quebec currency, and not to take money from Ottawa, and to have a referendum. And he happened to walk by behind Denny while Denny was answering questions from the press. And I'll never forget the scene. Denny, that was classic. You took your arm around Plamondon. He was totally in shock. And you said, mais dites-moi, Monsieur Plamondon, où est la facture? Comment tu vas faire tout cet référendum, toute cette indépendance sans un coup? How are you going to do all this without a bill? It was just classic. And he had no answer.
By saying, you want to make the news? Come with me. And secondly, I said, where's your independence budget for the first year? And secondly, if you do remember, he spoke a lot about Slovakia. I said, oh, you want to talk about Slovakia? Come. And he left 2 minutes afterwards.
I am curious about one thing, just between you and me, Denny.
Yeah.
Come on, you're the chef. Hopefully you'll be the chef again. Just between you and me. Nobody else is listening, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious. You're going to have another co-chair with your campaign that you said in your statements that can't be, for professional reasons, this person can't reveal who it is. Can you give us an idea in petit goût, a little taste, like from where are they coming from?
He's the son of a former minister.
Oh, now you really got me interested. Okay, I won't say anything more. I won't.
He's a young lawyer.
I was, as we all were, troubled to hear of the health problems of Carl Blackburn, but the prognosis is very good for Carl, but he wants to take care of his health. But I know that you and Carl have a certain relationship going back, and certainly Carl has got a great organization within the Quebec. True. As this campaign goes on, and Carl's health will be fine, do you see him playing a role organizationally in la nouvelle équipe Coderre?
Listen, I would suggest this, Beryl. Everybody who wants to make this system work and get rid of the current government are welcome. Now, Carl, I have a lot of respect for Carl. As a matter of fact, he would have been a tremendous candidate too, because he has roots.
Yeah.
And you respect the people. So if he's not available for the leadership, he can be available for election, but it will be up to him. But there's always room for people like Carl Blackburn in the party.
Do you think we will see certain federal liberals that we've all been close to helping out the campaign? People like Martin Cochon, for example, helping out your campaign.
What I believe is that anybody's welcome to help, but the Liberal Party of Quebec is totally independent of the Liberal Party of Canada.
I know, but Martin's out of politics.
It's not the same. But if people want to help, listen, they know that where I'm coming from. They know I call a spade a spade. What you see is what you get with me, and at the end of it, we have to protect our country and our province, and I think that we have a great way of life. I'm a bit scared when Mr. Legault is saying that we have 5 accounts in our group. So good thing we didn't have 10, because the deficit would be far more than that. But I believe that what we need to do is we need to bring back the radical center. We need to bring back the center. We need to bring back people who are responsible fiscally, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we are there for the people who are in need.
I'm going to throw in one request before I wish you bon chance. And my one request is this. Last week, we reported, and it was a major story, for the first time, Centraide and other major organizations identified that the people living at vulnerable economic state was 300,000 households in Montreal. That's 900,000 to 1.2 million people. I believe that Denis Coderre can bring back a voice of compassion for these people, that he can say to the people of Quebec, as you would say, Monsieur, Madame, tout le monde.
Let me give you an example.
We need to tighten our belts. We're not going to give out money to every multicultural and diversity organization. We're going to end poverty. We're going to seriously look at une revenu de base.
We need a new way to govern. We need to respect municipalities. I think that they are true government of proximity, and if we give them the tools to work with, and in return. Because housing is not an issue of money, it's an issue of permits. And make sure that all the real estate brokers can be part of the solution instead to consider all of them a bunch of crooks and that we cannot talk to them. I think that if we bring the private sector and the public sector talking to each other, we can make things happen. The greatest thing that happened to me is because, I want to create all those spaghetti events. There's those homelessness. His name is Joe. Another one said, they all call me Denis or Mr. Mayor. He said, Denis, we hope that we'll have one for the homeless. I said, sure, we'll have one for the homeless. So people will still remember that when you look at me, I'm going to talk to you, that's for sure, and that there's room for everybody. I want to make sure that this country, this province, everybody feel like first-class citizens.
Denis? We wish you luck, but I want to say something to you that I said to members of the caucus. If the Liberal Party of Quebec does not regain its voice for the most vulnerable, then we will have lost, you will have lost, the party will have lost the biggest weapon to roll back Quebec Solidaire. And that's the biggest threat in Montreal, which is home base for the Liberals. We need a compassionate voice.
We won't have to fight on that one, that's for sure.
Mon ami, bonne chance.
Tada. Take care.
Bon été.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
We will be right back with Anthony Bonaparte. And for the moment, we will go to the CJD Traffic Center.